back at me? Will we leave behind the innocent to grieve? On their own, on the run, when their lives have only begun. These could be our daughters and our sons. And just like a drum, I can hear their hearts beating. I know my God won't let them be defeated. Every child has a dream to belong and be loved. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love the least of these, then they will be brave and free. Shout your name in victory. When we love the least of these, when we love the least of these. Break our hearts once again. Help us to remember.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Good morning. Welcome to the King's Report for January 17th, 2018, the 8th year of Cheongi, and this is the 12th month and first day. The 12th month, the final month of the heavenly calendar, begins today. We're getting close now to God's Day, closer and closer. Got to get prepared for that. And I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second king of Cheongi, Hyung Moon, today. And it is snowing in the Cheongi area, the palace area. It's been snowing since started snowing again lightly yesterday morning, Tuesday morning, and it's continuing to snow right now. And somewhere between 4 and 8 inches are accumulating there in the Cheongi area, and it's going to continue to snow for a couple of hours, maybe another hour and a half, 2 hours or so, perhaps, and then the snow will stop. And then tonight it's going to get cold. Right now it's 29 degrees, a high today of 30, with the sun coming out later on in the day. And then tonight will get down to the single digits, to 9 degrees, the real feel being at about 11 degrees. Then tomorrow, though, it'll be coming back up to 30 degrees. So we're staying right there close to the freezing mark, but a little bit below it. Saturday should be a somewhat warmer day. This week, of course, some are traveling by car to the SHOT Show in Las Vegas, and of course the king will be traveling across the Atlantic this week. So we'll be bringing you the weather reports of those areas as we go along this week. All right, then let's go to our Rimas for today. In the Bible, we're in Ezekiel chapter 23, and I'm going to start in verse 38. Ezekiel 23:38. Moreover, this they have done unto me. They have defiled my sanctuary in the same day, and have profaned my Sabbath. For when they had slain their children to their idols, then they came the same day into my sanctuary to profane it. And lo, thus have they done in the midst of mine house. And furthermore, that ye have sent for men to come from afar, unto whom a messenger was sent. And lo, they came, for whom thou didst wash thyself, paintest thy eyes, and deckest thyself with ornaments. The king has often pointed out that really the abortions that are going on today are no different than the slaying of children, the sacrificing of children to pagan gods that has gone on in non-Christian, non-Judeo-Christian cultures for centuries and even for millennia. And it was Judaism that stopped this. God told him don't do that, don't do that. And Jesus even said that those who harm these little ones, the children, it would be better for them if they have a millstone put around their neck and they'd be thrown into the ocean. So the tradition of Christianity has a very strong prohibition against abuse of children, sexual abuse of children, and even the killing of children like this. And unfortunately, in the early 1970s, the United States fell away from that when the Supreme Court decided that the U.S. Constitution somehow has a provision that allows for abortion. This was a terrible mistake that the Supreme Court made back then, and we hope that it can be corrected as quickly as possible, because thousands, even millions of fetuses are being aborted, and this is murder, because life begins at the point of conception. Life begins at the point of conception. This is simply a fact, and we have Father stating this on tape, on video. And I know that Family Federation has, I imagine they continue to teach a different content, saying that human life only begins at the point of birth. But this is simply not Father's tradition. Not only do we have Father on video, but also the second king even asked Father directly during the time that he was attending him directly about this point, and Father answered his question very directly. So there is no room for doubt in this, that Father's instruction, that the Word of God is that the human life begins at conception. And here also in the Old Testament, God talks about how it displeases Him that people at that time would slay their children, kill their children to their idols. In other words, sacrifice their children to idols, to pagan gods, and then have the audacity come into God's sanctuary and profane it in that way. And that's simply not something that God is not going to allow. And we hope and pray that the law can be changed, that the Supreme Court decision can be reversed, so that abortion is not illegal in the United States or any place in the world. And certainly our taxes should not be used to support abortion in any way. It is something that God does not desire at all. This is what pagan gods do. They demand the sacrifice of children because children are innocent, and pagan gods always demand the sacrifice and the killing of, the defiling of that which is innocent. Let's go to our Rima in the Cheonseongyong, and I am in the book on the way of the completed Testament age, and the chapter 4. And here on this 1568, through the declaration of the ideology centered on the Heavenly Father, we are to enter the era of a unified sovereignty. God must be upheld as the sovereign. Then we could be proud of the one God-centered sovereignty. After establishing the unified kingdom desired by Jesus and God, and doing away with the hell that exists both in the spiritual and physical worlds, we could enter the era of omnipotence through love, in which God would have direct dominion over us. By following the tradition of love, we would learn the meaning of God's vertical love and how we can be united through it, through our daily lives. Then we would rise above the world, which has rejected these traditions throughout all of its nations and in the spirit world. Then the era of liberation and unification would automatically come. And Father spoke these words in 1989. It's very interesting that Father here states very clearly that God must be upheld as the sovereign. And then we can be proud of the one God-centered sovereignty, the sovereignty centered on the one God. Right now, the second king is going through the Gospels and the Bible again, showing how the gospel of Jesus, as defined by Jesus himself, was the gospel of the kingdom. And that is a tremendous realization that I have come to through the Second King, thanks to him, that this was Jesus' central message, that the kingdom of God is coming, and that we should repent and prepare ourselves to be able to receive the kingdom of God, to enter, to build the kingdom of God, to become the people who are acclimated to that kingdom of God culture. This is the central point of Jesus' mission. The parables that he taught were about the kingdom of God, and the kingdom of God, and he said that he was sent to preach the kingdom. He says this over and over and over again. And what was especially interesting to me was that in Acts verse 2, I believe, where it says that in the 40 days that he was with his disciples after his resurrection, he spoke to his disciples about matters pertaining to the kingdom. He did not say, okay, I've been crucified, I was dead, I was buried, and then I resurrected, so all you have to do now is believe in the cross and the resurrection, and you'll go to heaven. No, that wasn't his, even after his resurrection, that was not his central message. His message, where he talked to it for 40 days, he spoke to the disciples about matters pertaining to the kingdom, because Jesus' central focus and Father's central focus was and is to build a kingdom centering on God, where God is king. But he is not a despot. And this is the point that the second king has made very clear. God is the king, and in each generation he has his representative body and inheritor on the earth. The second king is that now, and Moon Shin-jun will be that later at some point, but not now. But right now it is the second king, Moon Hyung-jin, and then so there is the God is the king, and there is his representative body and inheritor on earth as the king of Cheonryuk. But this king is not a despot, and so that is why, if you look at the Cheonryuk Constitution, the king does not have absolute power. In fact, if you look at the Cheonryuk Constitution, the king has very little power. The king is as the king, second king has pointed out, is basically a judge. That is his main function, to be a judge. He has the power to receive appeals from the Supreme Court. In other words, after a case has been heard by the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court has rendered a verdict, it can be appealed to the king, and then the king can make a final decision. If he receives such an appeal, he can make a final judgment. That is the main function of the king probably the most important function of the king in the Cheonryuk Constitution. He has other roles as well. For example, he appoints the bodyguards of the president. He names the members of the Supreme Court, who then must be approved by the Senate. So there are these functions as well. But the most important thing is that he is a judge, because that is the Messiah, and that is God's role to be for us. That is to be the judge. The Cheonryuk Constitution is a libertarian constitution, but it is also a libertarian republican monarchy. It has a monarch, it has a king, and it is a republic, but it is a libertarian republic, where as much as possible, authority and power is taken away from the government and limited in the government, but is passed down to the states and to the individuals. And so, for example, the federal government cannot engage in education, cannot be engaged in healthcare. And what else? The army cannot maintain a standing army. Air Force and Navy, yes, and also a space agency, yes, but not an army. The reason, of course, is that throughout history, we've seen how governments, centralized governments, have misused armies to attack their own people. That even happened in the United States. Even in 1970 in Kent State, that was the Michigan National Guard, but that was still the professional soldiers there who shot and killed some of the students who were peacefully protesting the Vietnam War at that time in 1970. Of course, going back even to Lincoln and to the New York draft riots, when Lincoln tried to start drafting people in New York to fight in the Civil War, there were riots, and he used the professional army, professional soldiers, to fire upon the rioters, the people of New York, the citizens of New York. This kind of thing cannot be allowed, cannot be made possible in Cheongguk. It must not be made possible at all in Cheongguk. And so we see that the king has a very limited authority, limited power in that sense under the Cheongguk Constitution. So it is a kingdom, but it is a very different kingdom from what we've experienced in the past. And of course, that stands to reason, because God's kingdom is not going to be modeled after Satan's kingdoms. Satan's kingdoms were centered upon himself, and and the kings that in Satan's kingdoms had absolute power because they wanted to bring all the power to themselves and to make slaves of the people. But that is not the way that it works in God's kingdom. So hope that you have a chance to look at the Cheongguk Constitution again. I know that there are classes going on. There's a class going on in this semester's, our spring semester's HSU, Holy Spirit University, about the Constitution. I encourage people to sign up for that, because this really is the culmination of the principle. This is the culmination. This is God's ideal. I keep saying that the Constitution is the owner's manual. It's the operator's manual for human society. This is how God intended it to be. All right, let's take a break now, and we'll come back and we'll start going through the news today from a Cheongguk perspective.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Struggle. There was a lot of things I really liked about Diella from the very beginning. You know, I loved her passion, the way she sang to the church, the loyalty she had to her parents, and you know, I really wanted somebody who's loyal to True Father, and I knew if she's loyal to her parents, that's a good sign. And the one memory I really have, it really helped me really decide I really want to get blessed to her, was she said that I'd always be second, and she'd always put God before me. And I knew if she was willing to put God before me, I could like fully trust her. And that was something that really moved me to, like, I knew at that point, like, I wanted to get blessed to her.
Okay, so at first when we met, we completely put each other in boxes, from the famous box. And I don't know, I was praying and praying and praying, and I was just not sure in the beginning. We both weren't, and but we just continued talking, and but for some reason it just didn't seem to work, because we were just too focused on ourselves, I think. So, but I kept praying and praying, and then one day I was very frustrated, and I even talked with my mom, and she told me, you know what, Diella, I can see he really loves God. And if he loves God, he can fully love you. And I think that's what I needed to hear, and from that moment on, everything changed.
And welcome back to the King's Report for January 17th, 2018, 8th year of Chungi, the 12th month and the first day. And we're joined this hour by Mr. Greg Knoll. Yes.
Good morning, Tim.
Thank you for coming through perilous course.
It was a life-threatening experience this morning.
Life-threatening. Wow. Yes. Tell us about the road this morning.
Well, it's they haven't really had a chance to get out there and plow, so the roads are extremely treacherous. And there was, truck drivers are very experienced drivers, and they were off into the ditches. So I recommend everybody just stay home for a while. Don't do what I did. Well,
it is supposed to stop snowing in the mid-morning, around 8 or 9 o'clock or so.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's mid or early morning, but so after that, I guess it should improve. But yes, I think once they get the plows out and the sand trucks out, that should improve. But I guess at least for the time being, people should stay home. Check local school schedules. I would imagine that some schools are being closed this morning in this area.
Definitely closed. If not the whole day, at least a 3-hour delay or something like that.
Yeah.
But I would think they would be closed the whole day.
Yeah.
And Wednesday service is canceled, right?
Wednesday Korean service has been canceled. Yes. All right. I want to start out with an article that catches my eye, although other people may not take it so seriously. But I think this is I take these things seriously as something that is leading to something else. Not that this in itself is going to be serious, but it's beginning to show a trend. New California movement seeks to divide the Golden State in half. Two men have launched a campaign to divide rural California from the coastal cities, motivated by what they refer to as a tyrannical form of government that doesn't follow the state or federal constitution, the San Francisco Chronicle reported. Unlike the failed 2016 campaign to split California into 6 states, the New California movement, founded by Robert Paul Preston and Tom Reed, seeks to consolidate rural California into a distinct economy separate from the coast. Preston and Reed say the citizens of the state live under a tyrannical form of government that does not follow the California and U.S. constitutions. The founders have evoked Article 4, Section 3 of the United States Constitution as justification for establishing a new economy with a new state constitution. It states that a consensus must be reached by the state legislature of California as well as Congress. The process, according to New California representatives, could take 10 to 18 months. The New California movement unveiled a Declaration of Independence earlier this week that called for a free and independent state with full power to establish and maintain law and order to promote general prosperity. And actually, you can go to a website called newcaliforniastate.com. And you can see their Declaration of Independence that was declared day before yesterday.
So this is the rural economy wanting to separate from the
coast.
They're the ones that are initiating this.
Yes, the rural economy is initiating this. Yes, and if you go there, you can see a map of New California, and they want to become the 51st state of the union. So if you, I don't know if the tech team is able to bring up that map, but we see here blue. I don't know why it's colored blue of all colors, but anyway, the rural area is colored blue, and in the coast area is colored tan, perhaps appropriately. And it looks like the coastal area includes Los Angeles County, Ventura, Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo, Monterey, San Benedito, yes, Santa Cruz, San Mateo, Alameda, Marin, Sonoma, Napa, Solano, and Sacramento, I guess that is. Yes, okay. So they want to separate from that. And this is something I find encouraging, because I think that this is the way the United States was originally established. In fact, West Virginia separated from Virginia over the issue of slavery in the 19th century, and actually even before the independence, I think Delaware separated from Pennsylvania, I believe. So there should be an ability to make decisions like this, and I think the 10th Amendment should be revived. The 10th Amendment says that any power that is, paraphrasing, any power that is not specifically given to the federal government belongs to the several states and to the people. And since the Constitution does not say anything about secession or dividing, then that kind of power should belong to the states and to the people. And if they want to secede, if they want to leave the Union, they should be able to. Or if they want to divide their state into two like this, they should be able to, I believe. I think this is another indication of the rising tide of sovereignty. And this may not succeed. In fact, I would give it perhaps not very high chance of succeeding, but it is a part of that rising tide of sovereignty that we're seeing around the world. Caledonia and Spain and other areas around the world. Because, and this is, of course, exists in the past too, but now the providential time is ripe for people to want this kind of sovereignty, to rise up and grab their sovereignty, because that is the providential time in which we are living. So it'd be interesting to see how far they get, and if they don't succeed, then maybe the next movement will, maybe another movement someplace else will. We'll have to see. New York, yes, New York.
Being raised in upstate New York, we never felt represented by our politicians because all the interests, all the special interests, all the money, everything focused on the high population zones of New York City.
Sure, yeah.
And upstate New York had very conservative values, very much a Second Amendment region, and family values. Whereas downstate was extremely liberal, and we never felt. We always felt we were two different states, and we were never represented. And this was a point of incredible frustration for upstaters. And California, I think, is exactly the same situation, where you have the rural people really they're conceal and carry people. They believe strongly in family values, traditional family values, and they believe that smaller government is better. And whereas San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Diego, they believe in a much different form of government.
We have the same problem or similar problem here in Pennsylvania, or Philadelphia, especially in Pittsburgh. Really dominate, and other urban areas that dominate the state politics, and where we have and so as a result, we have a governor who is a out-and-out socialist, and I hope we can get rid of him this year, but I don't know, it's going to be a tough call. The people living in these urban areas, I guess for some reason, they like socialism. I think it's a good thing.
They like free things.
They like free things.
And they think government is the answer to their problems.
Out here, people don't agree with that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, people out here are independent, and they want freedom. They want to be able to. Build businesses. But as a result of this urban domination, Pennsylvania is relatively unfriendly to businesses, for example, and some of our politicians in this area have pointed out that there are businesses being set up just across outside of Princeton, just across the border, outside of Pennsylvania, to serve at Pennsylvania markets, this kind of thing. So, yeah, if this kind of thing can succeed in California, then maybe it will succeed elsewhere as well.
Yeah, I think it is a movement of freedom. Imagine if you live in Modesto, California, and you have Maxine Waters representing you, or Pelosi. To me, I'd be part of that movement. To create a separate state.
I see, yes.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
You feel like your vote doesn't matter, and that's not a good thing.
Yeah, that's right. All right, let's go through some of the headlines now. On Drudge, I just wanted to cover that story first because...
that is a very interesting movement.
I'm excited by these things, yes. Let's go through Drudge. 20 years ago today, BBC arrival of the digital age, Lewinsky blames Drudge. So it's the 20th anniversary of the Monica Lewinsky affair, or the revealing of that. And Drudge's, of course, yesterday also had some articles on that, because that really was the story that really made Drudge famous. Of course, Drudge was doing his thing before then too, but Monica Lewinsky thing really brought him into the limelight.
So is Lewinsky part of the Me Too movement?
No. she was. I would say that she was. Of course, hey, let's not get into that. But Lewinsky was got what she deserved, basically. Yeah.
I think so.
Dreamer deal turns nightmare. Earthquake causing meteor rattles Michigan. Weather Service stumped. Wall Street Journal antitrust case against Facebook, Google, Amazon, Apple. New flu strains on the way. Could get worse. California hospitals war zone set up tents to treat. Warning for dog flu.
See, we all need to jump into ice cold water to prepare ourselves.
Well, this is what I'm doing today, and this is actually working very well. This is vinegar, vinegar solution, not pure vinegar.
Uh-huh.
But I find that this is working quite well for me.
Apple cider vinegar is another form of that.
I'm not sure
I
what
guess.
kind of vinegar it is. My wife just keeps, she's just handing it to me, and I'm just drinking this vinegar. And even if my nose starts to run, I take a few sips of this, stops right away.
Well,
Yeah.
there you go.
So
And
I'm
it's cheap. It's an inexpensive
Yes.
form of building your immune system.
Yes, and then I have here another. This is a ginger tea. So
Keep your distance.
yeah. Update: a warning as eye bleeding fever outbreak spreads.
So these are all health issues.
Yes.
So I think the message here this morning is to really eat well.
Mm-hmm.
Don't eat a lot of junk food. Don't compromise your immune system because there's a lot of stuff out there that can bring you down. And some of these strains of flus are quite serious now.
Yes.
They can knock you out for a couple weeks. And a lot of it is preventable if you are strong, if your immune system is strong and you take care of yourself. You can, even if other people around you are getting the flu, you don't necessarily have to get it.
On the other hand,
Yes.
I hate to speak out against the orthodoxy.
You usually do.
President Trump had his health checkup, and the doctor gave a news briefing yesterday. And where is that story? Anyway, one of the questions was from one of the, because the reporters, they couldn't believe, they didn't want to believe. They had
That
to
he's
say that
healthy?
there has to be something wrong with this guy that we can blow up. And so one of the questions was, how is it that a guy who eats McDonald's hamburgers and fried chicken is in such good health? And the doctor said something to the effect, well, he's got good genes.
Good genes, yeah.
So-
But, genes and DNA can be eroded over generations. So he may be lucky, but he's got to be careful for Barron, for Barron's sake and then Barron's children.
Well, I'm sure Melania looks like a type of mother who does not feed her children McDonald's. Yes.
Probably not.
Yes. Okay, so we also have that. Just the other side. Let's see. Murder in Camden, lowest in 30 years. That'd be Camden, New Jersey, I guess.
Yeah, that's usually a very violent place.
Yeah. L.A. County Sheriff's deputy charged with drug trafficking. Offered protection of other officers to dealers. Well, that happens sometimes. Church of Satan believes sex robots could save society. Well, and actually, I see what they're saying, because their ideal can be achieved through sex robots. I can see that. Because Church of Satan, Satan always wants to divide people. He doesn't want people procreating, for one thing. I mean, all these children of God, it's a problem. It's a problem. So he doesn't want people procreating like that, and he wants, if they do procreate, he wants them to abort or give child sacrifice. So I can see how they.
He doesn't like traditional marriage either. Satan doesn't like that either. So
I can see how they would say that the sex robots are a good thing. Ex-CIA agent suspected of compromising Chinese informants. This is a serious situation. We'll have to look at that later on, because the U.S. Basically the U.S. spies in China were identified by this person to China, and they were caught and in many cases executed. A Beijing billion-dollar infiltration of U.S. classrooms. Communist propaganda welcome for the right price. A hip-hop generation gap. Emo versus dad rap. Then Bannon has been gagged because Mueller has now subpoenaed him.
Yeah, this will be interesting.
Total free-for-all on Hill. Interesting, but we may not learn very much until later on. Bannon to cooperate with Mueller? I have to see. 2020 Dems pose big dilemma for Schumer. Sundance picks women majority jury for Me Too era. Oh, Me Too has now become an era. A growing number of actors renouncing Woody Allen. It's about time.
Yeah, really.
It's about time. I mean, this guy's the poster child or the poster dirty old man for pedophilia.
Yeah.
And now they start renouncing Woody Allen? Come on.
He married his stepdaughter.
Yes.
She was 21 and he was, I don't know.
Well, when they married, when they married, she was of age, but he was having a relationship with her before that.
Yeah, the guy is disgusting.
I mean, he marries Mia Farrow and then develops a relationship with Mia Farrow's adopted daughter.
Yeah. What kind of human being does that?
Well, if they're renouncing Woody Allen, can Bill Clinton be far behind?
Exactly. Why does he get off the hook?
Yes. President deliberately undoing Obama legacy. Yes. Media versus Trump 2017, 90% negative. Italy's Drudge, ? And then pretty dresses no longer just for women. Golden edge of drag. That's the end times, folks. Smart city technology goes wild. Car knows more about you than spouse does.
Well, that's true. You know, Google, Facebook, they know a lot more about people than your significant other. Because what the kind of sites you visit throughout the day.
Yes.
They, as the King was showing the other day, there's a very detailed profile being created for every single human being online.
Yes, as the James O'Keefe videos, undercover videos of Twitter have revealed.
We all suspected it, but that was a really good expose.
Yeah. Something needs to be done about that sometime.
I think it's going to take breaking up of that monopoly, that liberal monopoly, that really devilish monopoly, and a conservative Google alternative that truly respects people's individual rights. And maybe you pay maybe you pay $10 a month for that service, but they absolutely do not meddle with your personal information. It's going to take a billionaire to launch it. Yeah. But hopefully that's something that we need choices. Right now we have no choice.
All right. $260 billion crypto collapse as currencies plunge overnight. It's cryptocurrencies. Yes. Yeah. And a lot of this is due to the sort of the confusion that's going on in South Korea, because the South Korean government is trying to regulate the cryptocurrency, and because cryptocurrencies have become such a craze in Korea. I mean, everybody's in it.
Ponzi scheme.
And I guess because the worldwide market is not that large, a country like Korea can sort of dominate it. And so the leftist government, they want to centralize all authority. And so they say, we're going to ban these, or we're going to close these down. Part of the problem, of course, they have is that North Korea keeps hacking into their exchanges and stealing Bitcoin. Because the whole thing about cryptocurrencies is that it nullifies economic sanctions. And this is why also Russia is developing a crypto ruble, and Venezuela is developing their cryptocurrency. So, as the King has said, this is coming. Cryptocurrencies are coming. Nobody can stop it as long as there's an internet. Unless they just close down the whole worldwide internet, then you could stop cryptocurrencies. But otherwise, these things are coming. We don't know which one. Maybe many will come. Maybe Bitcoin will disappear overnight. But anyway, cryptocurrencies in general are definitely coming. And this is going to completely undermine the control of central banks. Then
it's part of the
Rothschilds
building of the kingdom, I guess.
It is.
How else can the bankers be humbled and brought to their knees?
Yes.
I mean, think about it.
The Chengdu Constitution says there cannot be a central bank, but cryptocurrencies make basically central banks irrelevant.
Right, and that's a fearful thing.
Yes,
for a lot of people.
It's coming. This is something that I think during this year is going to really come to the fore.
Yeah.
Change is happening at a tremendously rapid pace.
Yeah. Father's very active in the spirit world.
Yes. Mexican journalist stabbed 21 times in front of his family. Ouch. A river of gold controlled by drug lords runs through Miami. But then again, you have to cannot say, okay, let's have a war on drugs for that. People who are involved in that need to be armed so that they can take care of that. Trump gets top marks on cognitive assessment and medical exam, but how will you score if you dare?
You mean he's not insane? He's not
apparently not.
Gone?
Apparently not.
Wow.
California House of Horrors.
What's Maxine going to say?
Yeah, I know.
Impeach him.
So
he's too intelligent.
So now we can say, okay, Maxine, how do you score? What is your score?
That would be great.
Did you take the test? Did you take the test? and Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah.
Nancy Pelosi.
She's having a hard time speaking.
Yes. Can't remember who the president is. Bush? Which Bush is it? California House of Horrors neighbor reveals kid's clone army. Marched at night. Police still baffled. That situation is truly tragic, but cannot be used. It must not be used to clamp down on family sovereignty, homeschooling, and this kind of a thing. That is what the leftist media is going to try and do, and it's already trying to do that.
Yeah.
New Star Wars movie flops in China. Ohio State course reprimands white heterosexual masculinity. Campuses brace for more tumult. Why are people going to college now? I don't understand. Epidemic of female sex addicts, a rise of women-friendly porn, counterfeit money problem plaguing New York City, phony big bills finding way into wallets. Next, live in pipes. Workers at Apple supplier describe harsh conditions. All right. Let's see. Let's look at this ex-CIA agent being arrested for revealing the Chinese operatives. This is a New York Times article. Ex-CIA officer suspected of compromising Chinese informants is arrested. A former CIA officer suspected by investigators of helping China dismantle United States spying operations and identify informants has been arrested, the Justice Department said on Tuesday. The collapse of the spy network was one of the American government's worst intelligence failures in recent years. The arrest of the former officer Jerry Chun-Shing Lee capped an intense FBI inquiry that began around 2012, 2 years after the CIA began losing its informants in China. Investigators confronted an enduring mystery. How did the names of so many CIA sources among the agency's most dearly held secrets end up in Chinese hands? Some intelligence officials believed that a mole inside the CIA was exposing its roster of informants. Others thought that the Chinese government had hacked the CIA's covert communications used to talk to foreign sources of information. Still, other former intelligence officials have also argued that the spy network might have been crippled by a combination of both, as well as sloppy tradecraft by agency officers in China. The counterintelligence investigation into how the Chinese managed to hunt down American agents was a source of friction between the CIA and FBI. Mr. Lee, who left the CIA in 2007, has been living in Hong Kong and working for a well-known auction house. He was apprehended at Kennedy Airport in New York on Monday and charged in federal court in Northern Virginia with the unlawful retention of national defense information. He appeared in Brooklyn federal court on Tuesday and is being held there while awaiting transfer to Virginia. He does not have a lawyer, a Justice Department official said. The FBI apparently learned that Mr. Lee was traveling to the United States and scrambled to charge him on Saturday. Mr. Lee had previously traveled to the United States in 2012 to live with his family in Virginia. It was during that trip that FBI agents searched his luggage during hotel stays in Hawaii and Virginia and found 2 small books with handwritten notes that contained classified information. He later made his way back to Hong Kong after being questioned by FBI agents in 2013. They searched his luggage in his hotel room.
And they found incriminating information, but still he was released.
It is unclear why Mr. Lee decided to risk arrest by coming to the United States this month. In the books, the agents found Mr. Lee had written down details about meetings between CIA informants and undercover agents, as well as their real names and phone numbers, according to court papers. Prosecutors said that the material in the books reflected the same information contained in classified cables that Mr. Lee had written while at the agency. More than a dozen CIA informants were killed or imprisoned by the Chinese government. The extent to which the informant network was unraveled, reported last year by the New York Times, was a devastating setback for the CIA. Officials said the number of informants lost in China rivaled losses in the Soviet Union and Russia during the betrayals of both Aldrich Ames and Robert Hansen, formerly of the CIA and the FBI. They divulged intelligence operations to Moscow for years. The CIA declined to comment on Mr. Lee's arrest. According to court documents, Mr. Lee served in the United States Army from 1982 to 86 and joined the CIA in 94 as a case officer. Former agency officials said he also served in China during his career. Those who knew him said he left the agency disgruntled after his career plateaued. Prosecutors said that both before and after he and his family moved back to the United States in 2012, Mr. Lee met with former CIA colleagues and other government employees. As the agency began losing assets in China, it was not clear at first that the losses were systemic, but as the disappearances mounted, the American intelligence community eventually realized it had a major problem.
Losing assets.
The case had frustrated counterintelligence officials in the FBI and CIA as they sought to determine how the Chinese had disrupted agency operations in the country. The FBI suspected an insider had revealed sensitive information to the Chinese government, a theory not initially embraced by the CIA. Mr. Lee eventually became a prime suspect in the hunt for a traitor. Former intelligence officials said that the FBI lured Mr. Lee back to the United States as part of a ruse, and he was interviewed 5 times in May and June 2013. The authorities said he never disclosed the 2 books, described as an address book and a date book, to investigators. Former officials said they were surprised that Mr. Lee came back to the U.S. in 2012, knowing he might be under U.S. FBI suspicion. Details about the FBI operation to lure him back were tightly held, but former intelligence officials said he returned with the promise of a possible contract with the CIA. Many former agency officers leave the agency and then return on contract. At some point after the FBI interviewed him, Mr. Lee returned to Hong Kong. Why the FBI did not arrest Mr. Lee after originally finding the classified material in his notebooks remains unclear. The FBI declined to comment. Officials are concerned that Mr. Lee's case and at least one other represent a troubling pattern of Chinese intelligence targeting former agency officials, an easier task than trying to recruit current CIA operatives. In June, a former CIA officer was charged with providing classified information to China and making false statements. Prosecutors said that the former officer, Kevin Patrick Mallory, 60 of Leesburg, Virginia, had top-secret documents and incriminating messages on a communications device he brought back from Shanghai. In March, prosecutors announced the arrest of a longtime State Department employee, Candace Marie Claiborne, accused of lying to investigators about her contacts with Chinese officials, according to the criminal complaint against Ms. Claiborne, who pleaded not guilty. Chinese agents wired cash into her bank account and lavished her with thousands of dollars in gifts.
That's a messy world.
Well, China is, determined to surpass the United States and become the preeminent superpower in the world. And they believe that they can do this by, 2050, I believe, which would be a year after their centennial. And by 2032, they're supposed to surpass the United States and become the largest economy in the world.
Yeah.
Not per capita, but aggregate. His father said that communism does not get past number 7. And their 70th anniversary actually is next year. So we'll have to see how they fare then. But China is the preeminent threat to the United States and to the world and to the entire Judeo-Christian providence that God has been conducting for 6,000 biblical years. because there is no philosophical justification or foundation for human rights or for human dignity or human value. Except, the only value that a human being has is the extent to which they serve the Communist Party. And in China, even the religious organizations are allowed to exist only if they follow the guidance of the Communist Party. Only if they put the Communist Party above God.
It's the national level of idolatry.
Yes. Yes.
Satan's kingdom.
Yes. All right, let's take a short break, and we'll be back in a minute with more news from a Chinese perspective.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
It's a blessing of marriage, but the blessing of marriage is supposed to be full of joy unspeakable.
I mean, the blessing itself was amazing. I mean, it was a very special experience. I mean, it was the biggest day of my life. And we had all our family there. People came from all the way from Colorado. This one couple even from Colorado came last minute. They took a bus to get here, and I just felt so much love from friends, family. I felt God's love. I mean, I just couldn't believe that I was getting blessed. That day finally came, and I was just totally peaceful and excited, and it was an amazing experience.
Well, for me, there was one particular moment. First of all, the whole ceremony, I did not have one moment the feeling it was about us. It was literally about true Father giving. He was the walking God on earth, giving us the blessing which we all did not. We don't deserve, basically. And it was just so beautiful to receive that, and I felt a lot of love. And there was also a moment where Hyung was saying, "True Father is smiling," and I think he said that 3 times, and I could see that, not physically, but I could just feel him being happy, which really calmed me down, made me peaceful and happy, and it was beautiful.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, or Wednesday, still Wednesday, isn't it?
Wednesday.
Wednesday, January 17th, 2018. Tim Elder and Greg Nolan for the second game of China Hyung Moon. And Greg is going to give us an important report on how China infiltrated the U.S. classrooms.
Yeah, it's part of China's strategy to change public opinion is to influence classroom studies at major universities and also through Hollywood. Disney recently came out with Born in China, which is a really a spectacular film about the beauty of China and the natural wonders of China, and it's really the purpose is to really create this warm and fuzzy kind of feeling about China, hiding the fact that it's a communist regime that really dominates and controls its people.
And China is a beautiful country, just that the Communist Party is making it hell. Yes,
right. So it's and the latest is this article focuses on how the Chinese government, the Communist Party, is pumping millions and millions of dollars into universities. So the article reads, this is from Politico. Last year, the University of North Carolina at Charlotte made an announcement to great fanfare. The university would soon open a branch of Confucius Institute, the Chinese government-funded educational institutions that teach Chinese language, culture, and history. The Confucius Institute would help students be better equipped to succeed in an increasing globalized world. Doesn't that sound nice? Says Nancy Gutierrez, UNC Charlotte Dean of College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, and broaden the university's outreach and support for language instruction and cultural opportunities in the Charlotte community, according to a press release. But the Confucius Institute's goals are a little less wholesome and edifying than they sound, and this is by the Chinese government's own account. A 2011 speech by a standing member of the Politburo in Beijing laid out the case. The Confucius Institute is an appealing brand for expanding our culture abroad, Li Shengsheng said. It has made an important contribution toward improving our soft power. There you go. It has made an important contribution toward improving our soft power. Mm-hmm. The Confucius brand has a natural attractiveness. Mm-hmm. So they understand that Confucianism in the West is something that is accepted by 99% of the population.
Yeah, it's exotic. Of course, during the Cultural Revolution of Mao, they tried to get rid of Confucianism.
Right.
So if you want to actually study Confucianism, you should go to the Republic of China on Taiwan, not to Communist China. But as the man says, it's a convenient brand.
Yeah, it's a soft power that they're using.
So are they actually teaching Confucianism?
I bet you a Confucius scholar would probably disagree. Using the excuse of teaching Chinese language, everything looks reasonable and logical. Li, it now seems, was right to exult. More than a decade after they were created, Confucius studies have sprouted up in more than 500 college campuses worldwide, with more than 100 of them in the United States, including George Washington University, the University of Michigan, University of Iowa. Overseen by a branch of Chinese Ministry of Education known colloquially as Hanban, the institutes are part of a broader propaganda initiative that the Chinese government is pumping an estimated 10 billion. Sorry, I made the mistake of spending millions. They're putting 10 billion into annually, and they have only been bolstered by growing interest in China among American college students. So it seems to be working. American universities are with open arms welcoming in Chinese propaganda. Yet along with their growth have come consistent questions about whether the institutes belong on campuses that profess to promote free inquiry. Confucius Institute teach a very particular Beijing-approved version of Chinese culture and history, one that ignores concerns over human rights, for example, and teaches that Taiwan and Tibet indisputably belong to mainland China. Take it from the aforementioned Li, who also said in 2009 that Confucius Institutes are an important part of Chinese overseas propaganda setup. Critics also charge that the centers have led to a climate of self-censorship on campus that play host to them. So they're not even hiding the fact that this is a propaganda tool of communist China to influence the young minds of American people. That eventually these young people will become the leaders of this nation, and their perception of China is being formed based on these so-called Confucius studies.
And China seems to be doing a better job than the Soviet Union did in infiltrating the United States with its propaganda.
Yeah.
And the U.S. and the Soviet Union, of course, did a pretty good job on its own, but China is using this soft power approach, and using using these brand names that actually go against their ideology, but are convenient for them. Actual Confucianism is not consistent with communism. In fact, that's why during the Cultural Revolution, Mao Zedong tried to obliterate all vestiges of China's Confucian past.
And millions of Confucians were killed.
Millions of Confucians were killed, yes. But now they find, oh, wait, this is a brand name.
This is convenient.
It's convenient.
Yeah, it's a good brand.
if if the Soviet Union had this kind of wisdom, the world would be in a much worse place than it is now. But people have to wake up. That's the only solution. People have to wake up and understand that China is not the answer. Communism is not the answer. Centralization of power is not the answer. And that these Confucian institutes are just a front for a propaganda organization and a totalitarian organization that is at least as bad as Nazi Germany.
People are disappearing in the night. If you have an opposing political view in China, you disappear in the night. And for some reason, the social justice warriors are not interested in that. Young people should be very concerned about people's human rights being violated in China, and not allow this kind of propaganda, which is government funded. This is really a satanic invasion on one of the many that's happening on college campuses today. As you said earlier, it's getting to the point where it's becoming insane to send your children to college because it is a huge propaganda machine, not only from communist China but from the far left.
Absolutely. All right. Is there more on that?
I think that's
about enough.
Covers the basics there.
Okay. The National Review has a story on how President Obama is step by step deliberately undoing the damage that Obama had done, and they have a photograph of the president, and it's captioned "President No Obama." Trump is commonsensically undoing piece by piece the main components of Obama's legacy. Donald Trump continues to baffle. Never Trump Republicans still struggle to square the circle of quietly agreeing so far with most of his policies, as they loudly insist that his record is already nullified by its supposedly odious author. Or surely it soon will be discredited by the next Trumpian outrage. Or his successes belong to congressional and cabinet members, while his failures are all his own. Rarely do they seriously reflect on what otherwise over the last year might have been the trajectory of a Clinton administration. Contrary to popular supposition, the left loathes Trump not just for what he has done. It is often too consumed with fury to calibrate carefully the particulars of the Trump agenda. Rather, it despises him mostly for what he superficially represents. To many progressives and indeed elites of all persuasion, Trump is also the prince of anti-culture, mindlessly naive American boosterism, conspicuous 1950s-style unapologetic consumption, repetitive and limited vocabulary, fast food culinary tastes, Queen's accent, and we're not talking about the Queen of England there. Queen's accent, herky-jerky mannerisms, ostentatious dress, bulging appearance, poorly disguised facial expressions, embracing rather than sneering at middle-class appetites, a lack of subtlety, nuance, and ambiguity. In short, Trump's very essence wars with everything that long ago was proven to be noble, just, and correct by Vanity Fair, NPR, The New Yorker, Google, The Upper West Side, and The Daily Show. There is not even a smidgen of a concession that some of Trump's policies might offer tens of thousands of forgotten inner-city youth good jobs, or revitalize a dead and written-off town in the Midwest, or make the petroleum of the war-torn Persian Gulf strategically irrelevant to an oil-rich United States.
Wow.
Yet one way of understanding Trump, particularly the momentum of his first year, is through recollection of the last 8 years of the Obama administration. In reductionist terms, Trump is an un-Obama. Surprisingly, that is saying quite a lot more than simply reductive negativism. Republicans have not seriously attempted to roll back the administrative state since Reagan on key issues of climate change, entitlements, illegal immigration, government spending, and globalization. It was sometimes hard to distinguish a Bush initiative from a Clinton policy, or a McCain bill from a Biden proposal. There was often a reluctant acceptance of the seemingly inevitable march to the European-style socialist administrative state. Excuse me there. Of course, there was sometimes differences between the two parties, such as the George W. Bush's tax cut or the Republicans' opposition to Obamacare. Yet for the most part, since 1989, we've had lots of rhetoric, but otherwise no serious effort to prune back the autonomous bureaucracy that grew ever larger. Autonomous, yes. Few Republicans in the executive branch sought to reduce government employment, deregulate, sanction radical expansion of fossil fuel production, question the economic effects of globalization on Americans between the coasts, address deindustrialization, recalibrate the tax code, rein in the EPA, secure the border, reduce illegal immigration, or question transnational organizations. To do all that would require a president to be largely hated by the left, demonized by the media, and caricatured in popular culture, and few were willing to endure the commensurate ostracism.
Wow.
Wow.
Very well said.
Very well said.
And Trump, God bless him, is willing to endure all of
Yes.
that.
At least, this is, he's got 1 year down and 7 to go. Wow. I hope that he can really last the full 7 years, because I don't think the left is going to change.
Yeah.
Trump has done all that in a manner perhaps more Reagan-esque than Reagan himself. In part, he has been able to make such moves because of the Republican majority, though thin, in Congress, and also because of, not despite of, his political incorrect bluntness. His in-your-face talk, innate cunning, reality TV celebrity status, animalistic energy, and his cynical appraisal that tangible success wins more support than ideology. And yes, in part, the wheeler-dealer Manhattan billionaire developed real sympathy for the forgotten losers of globalization. Even his critics sometimes concede that his economic and foreign policy agendas are bringing dividends. In some sense, it is not so much because of innovative policy, but rather that he is simply bullying his way back to basics we've forgotten over the past decades. The wonder was never how to grow the economy at 3%. All presidents prior to 2009 had at one time or another done just that, but rather, contrary to expert economic opinion, how to discover ways to prevent that organic occurrence. Obama was the first modern president who apparently figured out how. It took the efforts of a 24/7 redistributionist agenda of tax increases, federalizing health care, massive new debt, layers of more regulation, zero interest rates, neo-socialist regulatory appointments, expansionary eligibility for entitlements, and constant anti-free market jawboning that created a psychological atmosphere conducive to real retrenchment, mental holding patterns, and legitimate fears over discernible success. Obama weaponized federal agencies, including the IRS, DOJ, and EPA, in such a manner as to worry anyone successful, prominent, and conservative enough to come under the federal radar of a vindictive Lois Lerner, Eric Holder, or a FISA court. Trump has sought to undo all that, point by point. The initial result so far is not rocket science, but rather a natural expression of what happens when millions of Americans believe they have greater freedom and safety to profit and innovate, and trust they will not be punished materially or psychologically for the ensuing successful results. The radical upsurge in business and consumer confidence is not revolutionary, but almost natural. The left, and never Trump, right, claim that Trump is Stalin, Hitler, or Mussolini. In fact, for the first time in 8 years, it is highly unlikely that the FBI, IRS, CIA, DOJ, and other alphabet soup agencies see their tasks as going after the president's perceived opponents. The same about-face is true on the foreign policy front, as the ancient practice of deterrence replaced the modern therapeutic mindset. Obama blurred, deliberately so, the lines between allies and hostiles. America experienced the worst of both worlds. We were rarely respected by our friends, and even more rarely feared by our enemies. Loud rhetorical masculinity was backed up only by strategic patience and leading from behind. On the supposedly friendly side, Europe assumed that the United States would fawn after the virtue-signaling Paris Climate Accord. The Palestinians concluded that there was no shelf life on victimhood, and that America simply would not, could not, or dare not move its embassy to Jerusalem, as the Congress had chronically showboated it would. NATO just knew that endless subsidies were its birthright, and prior commitments were debatable. The West apparently lapped up Obama's Cairo speech, but when even the European Renaissance and Enlightenment were seen as derivatives of Islam, there is not much left to boast about. On the unfriendly side, China sensed there was little danger in turning the Spratly Islands into an armed valve of the South China Sea. Russia understood that America was obsequiously flexible and ready to push a red plastic reset button in times of crisis. ISIS assumed that American lawyers were vetoing airstrike targets. Iran guessed rightly that the Obama administration would concede a lot to strike a legacy deal on non-proliferation. He was unsure only about whether the Obama administration's eagerness to dissimulate about the disadvantageous details were due to a sincere desire to empower revolutionary Shiite Iran or an antipode to Israel and the Sunni oil monarchies, or arising from a reckless need to leave some sort of foreign policy signature. Kim Jong-un concluded that the 8 years of Obama administration provided a rare golden moment to vastly expand its nuclear and missile capability, and then announced it as an irrevocable fait accompli after Obama left office. Again, the common denominator was that the Obama administration, in quite radical fashion, had sought a therapeutic inversion of foreign policy in a way few other major nations had previously envisioned. Trump's appointees almost immediately began undoing all that. There were no more effective avatars of old-style deterrence than James Madison H.R. McMaster. Neither was political. Both long ago embraced a realist appraisal of human nature predicated on two ancient ideas. We are all more likely to behave when we accept that the alternative is far more dangerous to ourselves, and the world is better off when everyone knows the laws of the arena. Just as Obama's pseudo-red lines in Syria signaled to the Iranians or North Koreans that there were few lines of any sort anywhere, so too the destruction of ISIS suggested to others that there might be far fewer restrictions on an American Secretary of Defense anywhere. On the cultural side, the Trump team figuratively paused, examined its inheritance from the prior administration, and apparently concluded something like, "This is unhinged." Then it proceeded to the degree possible to undo it. Open borders, illegal immigration, and sanctuary cities are the norms of very few sovereign states. They are aberrations that are unsustainable, whether the practitioner is Canada, Mexico, or the United States. Calling a small pond or large puddle on a farm's low spot an inland waterway subject to federal regulation is deranged. Undoing that was not radical but commonsensical. Trump sought to revive the cultural atmosphere prior to Obama's assertion that he would fundamentally transform what had already been a great country. In 2008, it would have been inconceivable that NFL multimillionaires would refuse to stand for the national anthem, much less in suicidal fashion insult their paying fans by insinuating that they deserved such a snub because they were racist and xenophobes. It was Byzantine that the country would enter an iconoclastic frenzy in the dead of night, smashing and defacing statues without legislative or popular democratic sanction. The un-Obama agenda was not simply reflexive or easy, given that Obama was the apotheosis of a decades-long progressive dream. After all, in 1 year, Trump has been demonized in a manner unprecedented in post-war America, given the astonishing statistics that 90% of all media coverage of his person and policies has been negative. Obama was a representation of a progressive view of the Constitution that about a quarter of the population holds, but in Obama, that view found a rare megaphone for an otherwise hard sell. One would have thought that all Republican presidents and presidential candidates would be something like the antithesis to progressivism. In truth, few really were. So given the lateness of the national hour, a President Obama could prove to be quite a change. President No Obama. What do you think about that?
Well, yeah, I think that is a really well-written article, and I think it has been the frustration of libertarians, conservatives, and Republicans that there really has not been a two-party system for a very long time. And so I think that's really the success of Trump, is that he stands apart from the Republican Party. He did not come in actually as a Republican. He really came in as an independent voice. And he won the election, which is just a miracle. As the King keeps pointing out, imagine what we would be talking about today if Hillary was in office.
Yes.
It'd be a different discussion. We'd be backpedaling, really trying to save our nation from total destruction.
His author, by the way, is Victor Davis Hanson, an American military historian, columnist, former classics professor, and scholar of ancient warfare. As a National Review Institute Fellow, he has been a commentator on modern warfare and contemporary politics for National Review and other media outlets. He was a professor of classics at California State University, Fresno, and is currently the Martin and Illie Anderson Senior Fellow at Stanford University's Hoover Institution. He has been a visiting professor at Hillsdale College since 2004. Hansen is perhaps best known for his 2001 book, Carnage and Culture. He was awarded the National Humanities Medal in 2007 by President George W. Bush. Hansen is also a farmer growing raisin grapes on a family farm in Selma, California, and a critic of social trends related to farming and agrarianism.
Yeah, very interesting.
All right, let's take a short break, and we'll be back with more news from a Tony perspective after this.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Wednesday. This time I got it right, January 17th, 2018. And let's, in this final segment, to look at the furor that came as a result of a doctor finding that the president is healthy. How could he? Fox has a report on the press conference that took place, and this press conference was quite interesting, apparently. White House doctor peppered with questions as reporters hunt for evidence of a Trump illness. White House physician Ronnie Jackson was slammed with an onslaught of questions regarding President Trump's health in a bizarre press briefing on Tuesday that raised eyebrows as the press fished for maladies. There's got to be something wrong somewhere. Come on. Jackson said Trump was in excellent health after conducting the president's physical exam at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center on Friday, but the positive results weren't enough for the reporters in attendance. Jackson answered questions for more than 50 minutes, running the gamut from the odd to the conspiratorial. White House correspondents are asked about everything from whether Trump wears dentures to how to gauge his mental health. President Trump is berated on a regular basis for his alleged eating and sleeping habits, and many reporters seem decidedly disappointed or confused by the conclusion that he'd been given a clean bill of health. The Washington Free Beacon's managing editor, David Rutt, sarcastically impersonated a White House correspondent on Twitter, joking, "But the president will eventually die, correct?" Jackson mentioned that he was told by Trump directly to answer as many questions as possible, and the reporters on hand took full advantage. One reporter even asked if the president was addicted to drugs. That elicited a smirk from Jackson, who said Trump isn't addicted to anything. NBC News chief, White House correspondent Haley Jackson seemed particularly perplexed by Trump's positive results, asking about his mental fitness for office with her first question. The White House physician explained that he had no intention of conducting a cognitive assessment exam until Trump requested it. That revelation opened the door for a series of follow-up questions. Despite a detailed explanation of why the cognitive exam was conducted and why Trump was judged mentally fit to be president, the NBC reporter asked if Trump is the healthiest president of all time, something Trump's personal doctor once claimed. "I'm not going to make any comparisons with presidents over the past 200 years, Jackson responded. Kind of a lack of data, you know. I don't know, maybe Harrison was more, or maybe, you know, anyway.
Maybe George.
Maybe George Washington, maybe, you know, anyway, FDR, who knows who was the most most healthiest of all time. Who knows? A reporter then asked why Trump appeared to slur his words at a recent press conference, and the answer was simply that he'd had a dry mouth. But a reporter asked if dentures were the true culprit. The White House physician answered several questions about Trump's cholesterol and cardiac health before he was asked to elaborate on the cognitive assessment on layman's terms and discuss such conditions as early onset of Alzheimer's disease and dementia. The doctor reiterated that Trump had passed an extensive cognitive exam that tests for all those things and repeated the conclusion that the president doesn't suffer from mental issues. When Jackson explained that Trump appears sharp and often speaks his mind, a reporter rudely interrupted with the rhetorical question, "He speaks his mind?" Jackson elaborated on the weight loss goals for the president when CNN's Dr. Sanjay Gupta chimed in with a pair of questions about the president's cardiovascular health. Once the White House doctor elaborated on the president's heart health, however, it was back to a discussion of mental fitness. On what basis would you advise the cabinet that the president is unable to discharge his duties, one reporter asked. How does that bar get met? CNN's Jim Acosta, who was thrown out of the Oval Office by Trump earlier in the day, asked if the cognitive assessment was the same thing as a psychiatric exam. It wasn't, according to the doctor, and Acosta's network will scrutinize the difference if history is any indication. Another reporter asked about Trump's sniffles, while numerous correspondents questioned the president's eating habits. ABC's Jonathan Karl still didn't believe the positive report nearly 30 minutes into the briefing. Can you explain to me how a guy that eats McDonald's and Kentucky Fried Chicken and all those Diet Cokes and who never exercises is in as good a shape as you say he's in? Karl asked. It's called genetics, the doctor said. He's got good genes. The White House physician went on to take an assortment of other questions, such as whether Trump's life expectancy was known and how many scoops of ice cream he's allowed to eat. Acosta was eventually called on for a second time and asked if the doctor was holding anything back for privacy reasons, while another wanted reassurance that Trump isn't suffering from Alzheimer's. A reporter pointed out that Trump is close to the medical definition of obesity, and it became more apparent that some of the reporters were fishing for a dose of negativity at that point. Questions went on for several minutes, ranging from whether Trump would be sedated for a future colonoscopy to why the cognitive test was requested. Jackson was even asked if Trump watches too much TV. As the lengthy press conference was finally winding down, reporters asked about golf, Twitter, why Trump isn't as healthy as Barack Obama, if Trump has benefited from not smoking cigarettes, and if the president is monitored by a shrink. The Hill media analyst Joe Concha made an effort to sum up the event when he tweeted a link headlined, "Just in! The White House doctor says Trump requested and passed a mental health assessment." Concha captioned the tweet, "Would like to say that this analysis by actual medical professionals should put this narrative to rest, but that would require logic and impartiality." So, no way that is going to be put to rest. All right. Yes.
So this is a common strategy, right? Mm-hmm. If you can discredit the health and the mental fitness of a leader, then you can take a different course of action.
Yes.
Yeah. It gives
and
justification.
During the break, we were talking about how this was done with Father, our true Father.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, where True Father was marginalized.
Yeah.
Marginalized because of health concerns,
Yes.
and people didn't take Father seriously enough and started to make decisions on their own, including the Han Mother and Preston and other people. They thought they knew better. Mm-hmm. I think this is the conclusion. They think, if somebody is compromised in health, then gives justification to think that they know better.
Well, I think in that case it actually went beyond that. They were telling people that I know better.
Yeah.
But their motive was not that I know better. Their motive was I want it all. So a little bit different nuance there. And people below on the lower rungs, I think, bought into this. Oh, this person knows better.
Yeah.
Kwok knows better, for example. Mm-hmm. And I remember a conversation that I had that I didn't realize at the time, but that I was actually, this was kind of a conversation that was intended to see if I was a candidate for recruitment into the Kwok group. And talking to me about, do you think that it's possible for Father to have dementia, something like that. Mm-hmm. I think I was, apparently anyway, by the grace of God, I'm here today. I don't remember everything I said to that, but I think I answered in the negative. But yeah, the people down under were buying into this thing that, oh yeah, at that time it was Kwok knows better, and then, but there was a group of people, Kim Sok-byung especially, who has publicly said that I did not join Reverend Moon's church, I joined Hak Ja-han's church, who's actually publicly said that. And he was preparing, he said, for at least 3 years prior to Father's passing to make sure that the Han mother would be in charge of all the assets once Father passed. And so, when Father appointed his son, Hyung Jinim, as the representative body and an inheritor, they just sort of, okay, yeah, well, just wait till he's gone.
He's kind of losing it, and
wait till he's gone, then we'll be in charge.
Right.
And then the people, the 40% sociopaths that the king talks about, just went to where the power was.
Right.
And they went to where the money was. They saw power and money shifting in this direction, and opportunity shifting in that. So that's where they went, and that's where they are today. That's where they are today. But that was not where Father was.
Not all those who say, Lord, Lord.
Yes. And they're fine as long as there's no God.
There's a little bit of a problem there.
If there is a God, then they're in big problem. Yes.
Yeah,
But yes, so now, and maybe this is also a macro condition, that a doctor has come out, and of course these medical exams are performed on U.S. presidents on an annual basis, and this is something that's been done for a long time. So the news this time is that he requested a mental examination, and you can understand why he would, because people were questioning his mental acuity. So it was smart for him to request that, and he requested it because he is smart. Now that has come out as a clean bill of health, and so we'll see how this continues to affect the providence. I think it will. I think it will affect the providence.
Just one final comment about Father. Sanctuary is now the last remnant on earth that uplifts Father as being
yes.
the Christ, the Lord of the Second Advent.
Sanctuary congregations around the world.
Around the world as the only people really standing up, protecting Father's integrity, and right to his final breath, that we at Sanctuary, centered on the Second King, absolutely trust that God was working through Father right till the final breath, and even after his passing into the spiritual world as being the central authority, along with Jesus, the two as one, are really the core of what Sanctuary stands for.
Yes.
And Family Federation has clearly made a decision not to do that and to put the heretic Han Mother as the center, and the Kwok Group has decidedly put not Father at the center, but the Preston at the center. And I think this is if you really want to know what is the defining line, the separation is really, the Sanctuary is really following Father, absolute obedience to Father.
Thank you. That can be our last word for this morning.
Raju.
Thank you very much, Greg. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in this morning. And if you're in the Northeast Pennsylvania area, or anywhere along the East Coast where there's a lot of snow, be careful. Stay at home. Read your Cheonseonggyeong or something, or other providential activities at home that can be done at home this morning. All right. Thank you very much, and we'll see you again with the King tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. Have a God bless, Godspeed, and may His kingdom come.
Raju.